And it's so funny because I remember, being sitting on the chair, and as she was talking, and I was giving her the answer of the question she was asking. In my mind, I was like, oh, this is exactly how you should take care of people. This is how you take care of people. And as a nurse, I was kind of like, I've been missing that things all my life, of my nursing life. Because we are so going towards, okay, your knee is hurting. Okay, let's look at your knee. But never ever ask, okay, your knee is hurting. Okay, let me ask you, how do you feel when you are in society?
Welcome to the How to Take Care of Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Veronica Wolff-Casey, and I am so incredibly honored and just thrilled that you're here today. Today, we're diving deep into the world of caregiving, self-care, and Ayurveda with my amazing guest and friend, Jean-Francois. Jean-Francois spent over 2 decades as a clinical nurse and a clinical specialist before pivoting to become an Ayurvedic Health Counselor. In this episode, we explore his journey from the ICU to Ayurveda and his mission to help caregivers, perhaps like yourself, thrive by prioritizing their own well-being. If you've ever felt the weight of caregiving or the struggle to make space for yourself, this conversation is for you. But before we get started, I'm going to ask you to please hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever you found this, because that enables me to make the podcast bigger. It enables me to do more things. Subscribing also means that you'll never miss an episode filled with insights and actionable tips that help you continue to craft a life worth living. All right, let's jump in. Hello, Jean-Francois. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Veronica?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. I am so excited that you agreed to be on the podcast. I've been really looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. That's my first time I'm on a podcast. Actually, no, that's not true. That's the second time. But yeah, I'm super excited about that.
Awesome. So I know Jean-Francois from teaching Ayurveda school. He has been a student of Mona Warner's and then mine and Dr. Anusha's through this Ayurvedic journey he's been on most recently. But before that, Jean-Francois was a nurse and clinical specialist for over 2 decades, right?
Yes. So basically, I actually graduated as a nurse in 2000. Right away, my interest was more into actually psychiatry, but I also had an interest in traveling. So I studied in France, I graduated in France, and I found a job actually right away in Martinique, which is kind of the island that belonged to France, but it's like totally, it's in North America, if you think about it. And so at the time, there were no, internet was not big things. And I wrote a letter, and they called back my mother because I was at my parents at the time. They called back, and I came back one day from work, and my mother is like, somebody from Martinique called. And I was like, really? So I called back, and they said, yeah, if you want a job, you can come and we'll give you a job. But I did not ask more than that. So I said, okay, let's go. That was in August, and beginning of September, I packed my stuff. I took a flight. That was the first time I was flying in my life. I never ever, I know it's crazy. I never ever, flight before. I arrived in Martinique, and 2 or 3 days later, I went to the hospital like, hey, I'm here. And I remember vividly that woman, she was the head of nursing. It's beautiful, big person, and funny. But she said, "Okay, I have a job for you, and you're going to go and work in cardiac surgery ICU." And I'm like, "Cardiac surgery ICU?" I'm like, "I'm freshly graduated. ICU is absolutely not what I want to do. I want to work in psychiatry, if possible." And she said, "That's what I have for you. So it's either you take it or you leave." And I'm like, I'm like 1,000 kilometers from home, so no, I'm not going to I'm going to take it. So I took it. Spent actually 2 years over there as a nurse in cardiac surgery ICU, and I learned a ton of stuff, obviously, because that was absolutely not my specialty. And then after that, I wanted to move on and I wanted to travel again. I just applied for a sort of things with the government of Quebec, actually. They were looking for nurses at the time. And they were, oh, yeah, we want you to come. Please come. And I've been sponsored by the hospital, and it was actually a cardiac hospital. So I went and worked in the Heart Institute in Montreal in the ICU until 2006. And again, I was like, but that's not what I want to do. But they were like, but that's your specialty. And I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to do it because I want to travel and I want to discover the world. And that's how it works. So that's my nursing background. And after that, actually, I've been hired by a company that was selling some cardiac equipment. So we are still in the cardiac kind of realm in here. And for 18 years, I worked for Philips. That's a big company that sells equipment. First as a clinical specialist. So I was training nurses and doctors on how to use equipment, cardiac, monitors. And then I became the manager of the group because I have that things in me that I like to tell people what to do. I really like that kind of like leadership kind of things, and it came natural to me. So I became the manager, and until beginning of this year, beginning of 2024, where I left the company, and now here I am as a freshly graduated Ayurvedic Health Counselor, and there's tons of stuff that I want to do with that.
Wow, that's quite a journey. And you're originally from Brittany, right?
Yes.
And can you tell our audience, where is Brittany in relationship to Martinique and all of this? Because I think that's a very small town that many people haven't heard of.
No, so I was born in Brittany. So Brittany is, if you picture France, Paris, north, up in the picture, I'm completely on the west side. So really in that little kind of nose that come out on the west, northwest side of France. And we are just under the channel actually with England. And I grew up over there. It's really rural. I grew up in a village with less than 800 people at the time. I think that now there's 1,000 people. My mother still lives in that village. I really had a really great education in a sense that it was privileged. Basically, I was in a school where you give or take every year because of the number of kids. There were like between 18 and 25, kids in the school. And I mean the entire school. In my year in 1975, there were only three of us. There were myself, Caroline, I love her, and Vincent, still love him too. And that was the three of us. And obviously, every classroom had 4 different levels. We have to help each other because the teacher could not kind of be dedicated just for one section. So there were lots of kind of crisscrossing. And it was, obviously when you are in it, you don't realize it, but I had a really privileged education in that way that was really almost, private teaching, if you think about that.
Like a tutor. Yeah.
Like a tutor, exactly. And there's a funny thing that the teacher actually, she was really young. The one that I had for most of the time, her name is Michelle. I think that she retired now. I was in touch with her for in the last few years, but I haven't talked to her in a while. But when she came to my village, she was 21 years old. She was fresh out of school, of teacher school. And she really did not know what to do with us, actually. And so she did lots of practical stuff. And because she found out that what she learned at teacher school, I guess, would not apply because there were so many different levels and it was really the rural settings. But she taught us, it's really nice stuff. Like cooking, for example. You would have loved her, Veronica. We did cooking at school because she was living in the school, actually. When I was at school, too, they were living there. And so we used the kitchen. She taught us how to cook some stuff. She taught us how to do laundry, like separate the color from the white and stuff like that. I know she taught us how to sew. And I can tell you that it's still like something that I use nowadays. So that was super cool.
That's amazing. We don't get, so a lot of the United States, the educational system is just, they certainly don't teach you how to do laundry. you might learn how to cook in home economics if you take it, but it's not required. So you were actually taught how to take care of yourself at a very young age. It was an integral part of your educational experience.
Yeah, not only that, but to kind of like link with the desk doula stuff, actually, because we were in a very small village, everybody knows everybody. So that same teacher, Michelle, she wanted to kind of like build a community. So she invited people to come. So not only like the parents of the kids, but like the grandparents, but even like the older people who were like in the village who did not have any connection with the kids. If we were having a sort of like a Christmas, for example, there were like little kind of like show or whatever, or, there was some special function, everybody was invited, including the people who were not related to the kids, but because they were part of the community, they were coming. And I vividly remember that must have been in 1985, 1986 or something like that. So I was 10 years old, 11 years old. One of the older neighbor passed away, for example. And she took actually 3 of us to go and do a visit with the body. Because at the time in Brittany, the things when someone was passing, we did not have funeral home. So it was kind of like the body was exposed in the kitchen, usually, or in the living room for 2 or 3 days. And people were coming, mourning and stuff. So yeah, I remember vividly that she took, 3 of us to go and basically, say condolences and, knowing that we are here. And that was part of the education. I remembered that. And I was kind of like, okay, this is the things. When someone is in mourning, when someone passed, you don't have to be kind of scared about it or there's nothing weird about it. It's part of the experience. So I'm so grateful. I'm so happy that I learned that as a kid. That was another thing that she taught us. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so when did you become a death doula?
That was in 2019. So what happened, like fast forward to the last few years. So around 2016, 2017, 18 at work, I was starting to be kind of like, I'm happy. I was good at doing my job. I'm super good at my job.
I believe it.
I was good at doing my job and I really liked it. But there was something that was kind of like missing. And I was like, okay, I feeling it's not spacious and constricted in that settings. I need something. And in 2019, actually, I took a year off. I started my year off in October, not knowing that the freaking pandemic would like started in 2020. And my plan was to kind of like, okay, I'm going to learn a ton of stuff and I'm going to kind of open my horizon. I'm going to go and walk the Camino in Spain. I planned that. I'm going to do that. And I want to have a spacious year to learn the thing that I don't know what I'm going to learn, but I'm going to learn some stuff. Previous to that, I did my yoga teacher training. So I was a yoga teacher already. I was teaching yoga. So I met someone who did the death doula stuff. So I promptly registered myself for it. So that was in 2019. I think it was in September or October, right at the beginning of my year off. Yeah, I was interested by that because I'm really interested by end of life, but not just end of life, when you get older, end of life in general. So even like for myself, my older brother actually passed away in 2000. So just after I graduated, I was already in Martinique actually when he passed. I had to come back. And so there were like all these things. My father passed away in 2010, some family members, some friends since then. And I was like, I need to learn a bit more about that. And again, learn about it. And the message here is this is part of life. This is part of life and we cannot be ignoring it. And, another thing too is that, I found that people kind of like brush it really quickly, being like that person that I love, that person that I've been with, passed and it's done. And I have a meeting tomorrow. I have to go to the meeting. And then, I'm going to push. And then a few years back, it's come and bite you in the butt. Because that's exactly what happened to me with my brother, for example. I remember being in Martinique, for example, after he passed in November, and I went back and it must have been like 6 months, a year later, I was in the hospital and I was working. And I remember one of my colleagues being kind of like, what's going on with you? And I was kind of like, no, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. And I was pushing. And at some points, something happened. I don't remember exactly what it was. But then, I was in the unit and I was taking care of someone. And suddenly I could feel that it was coming up and I was kind of like, what the fuck is that? And broke down. And my colleague was like, what's going on? I was bawling and I was like, I can't do that anymore. I'm done. And I realized, all right, this is that thing that's coming back. I've been pushing it and this is not the right things to do. You cannot push these things. At some points or another, you have to feel it.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. We try to compartmentalize, and I especially think as healers, as healthcare people, we tend to be a little more adept at compartmentalization because we have to be in these spaces where things might be going on around us and we're like, okay, that's great, but I have a job to do, so I can't feel whatever emotion needs to be felt at that time. But I think then, just as you said, eventually that compartment has to burst open. It's almost like this is going to be a kind of a nasty example, but it's almost like a pustule, right? Like it gets more and more irritated as it sits. And if you don't deal with it, it's going to explode. And it does it usually at the most inconvenient time.
Oh.
And it feels like for no reason. And you have to figure out why it happened.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. Exactly. So yeah, that's why, I got interested by the death doula stuff. And so that was in 2019. And then I went because, it was my year of kind of like getting spacious. And my partner's Indian. I've been to India quite a few times, but that year I was like, I'm going to go to India just by myself without you, because I wanted to go into a yoga retreat. So I went in a yoga retreat in Goa. That was February 2020. So a month before the pandemic hit. And people were already talking about these things, but we were fully ignoring it. And so I went for that yoga retreat and I signed up for that stuff that I don't even know. It was not even a recommendation. I think it was a friend of friends who said like, oh, I went to that center and with that teacher, the guy is from London, UK. I never ever kind of like heard about him, but okay, apparently the place is great. It's a nice setting. It's on the beach and you can sleep on a hut. And this is totally my kind of shit. I want to do that. So I signed up for that, not knowing anyone, anything. And here I am. So I'm in that place called Ashiana and Goa. And yeah, the first few days, there's people from the retreat, but there's also people from just in the center, basically. And you talk to people and people are like, oh, I have my appointment with the doctor. Oh, I'm going to see the doctors. And I'm like, what the hell? Because I'm a nurse. So I'm like, what the fuck with you guys? Everybody's sick in here? And they're like, no, there's the Ayurvedic doctors. The what? The Ayurvedic doctors? I was like, what the hell is that? So they started to talk and I was kind of like, I want to go and see the doctors too. But I'm like, I don't have any problem. Well, I thought. I don't have any problem. I'm going to go and see the doctors. So I went to the desk, booked an appointment. And got an appointment for the next day or the day after, whatever. And went to see that woman. And I sat and I was thinking, okay, it's going to be like a doctor's appointment. Well, it took an hour and a half. And I was blown away by the questions she was asking me. One of the questions she asked, for example, hey, when you are with your friends out, are you the type of person who's going to go to some stranger first? Or are you going to let the people come to you? That's an interesting question. And all sorts of questions like that. And it's so funny because I remember, being sitting on the chair and as she was talking and I was giving her the answer of the question she was asking in my mind. I was like, oh, this is exactly how you should take care of people. This is how you take care of people. And as a nurse, I've been missing that things all my life of my nursing life. Because we are so going towards, okay, your knee is hurting. Okay, let's look at your knee. But never ever ask, okay, your knee is hurting. Okay, let me ask you, how do you feel when you are in society? Because this is not the kind of thing that you would ask. But in my mind, after we talked and after she gave me a report and she gave me some recommendation. And I was like, this is amazing. So not knowing about Ayurveda and stuff, I knew that there was something there already. So after I came back, okay, I need to kind of like figure out what that Ayurveda is. By the time I came back, pandemic was here. So everybody was locked down at home. So, okay, great time to study some shit. And yeah, so that's how I crossed the path of Mona. And I started following, what she was doing, some little courses like on Jyotisha, Ayurveda. And then she said like, okay, 2021, I'm going to do foundation of Ayurveda. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. And it did not happen because again, pandemic and stuff, not enough people were signing up. So I did it in 2022. And then 2024, my Ayurvedic Health Counselor training. And in 2 weeks from now, I'm starting my AP program with Dr. Anusha. So it's amazing. Yeah.
That is amazing. That's a heck of a journey. And what's interesting to me about what that whole story was really when you were sitting with the doctor. Now you have decades of clinical experience. You've taken more patient histories than you probably even care to think about. You've sat down in a similar space with these patients of yours, but never had it occurred to modern medicine, right, to allopathic medicine to be like, but how are you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you really? How are you in society? How are you when the wind blows? How are you when there are too many people in the room? How are you, et cetera, et cetera? And so it sounds like that was a real pivotal moment for you.
Oh, totally. No, totally. And when you understand actually the basic of Ayurveda and you dig a bit more, it's fascinating to know how, basically logical it is. Like, we talked about that yukti, that's, logic. This is totally logical every time. And now that's the thing that I've switched in my mind too. I was actually yesterday evening, one of my friends called me and she was like, oh, I think I need your help. What's going on? She was like, I think I have gout. You have gout. Okay, wait a minute. So she described some of the symptoms. I was like, oh, okay, no, this is not gout for sure. But there's some shit happening. And basically the thing is there's the shit is in your body. And I said, come home. We're going to do a full assessment because we're not going to do like a 20 minutes on the phone. We're going to really look at what's going on with you. And she was talking, it was in my mind. I already had some stuff that was going on. Let's do it properly. And let's go through some stuff. And then we're going to really work on it. And we're going to find some things. Don't worry about that. But yeah, there might be some symptoms of gout, but this is not gout. Because she was like, my shoulder is hurting, my hip is hurting. Gout is really in the feet most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, articulations, but still, there's other stuff. And I know her, so I know that there's other stuff. But yeah, I'm so grateful that you called me, and we're gonna go through that. And yes, because I know that Ayurveda can help for sure.
I think we've just uncovered one of the things that you see different from conventional medicine versus Ayurvedic medicine. But I'm really curious, are there other things, having had such a long experience in conventional medicine and now really having dove both feet into Ayurveda, where do you see similarities, dissimilarities? Where do you find that one might have strengths or utility where other ones don't? Really curious for your comparison.
I'm a nurse, and I work in hospital, and I've been around hospital for the last 20 something years. So I'm not gonna spit on them. We need them. We need the hospital. We need specialty medicine, cardiology, all that stuff. We need that for sure. But there's a space for everybody, and I think that where the space for Ayurveda is really in the prevention, and the day-to-day. Because there's some acute stuff that if you break your arms, Ayurveda is like useless. Sorry. Thanks, man. But you need to go to the hospital, you need to get a plaster, you need to do the stuff that needs to be done. But like my friends, for example, if you have some stuff like, oh, I don't know what's going on, there's some things, weird, you're gonna go and see the doctors, and the doctor is gonna be like, oh, it's inflammations. Let me give you some anti-inflammatory. Great. But that's going to take care of the symptoms. That's not going to take care of the roots. And that's why Ayurveda is different from the allopathy in general, is that we're not just focusing on the symptoms. We're going to focus on the roots. Where is that coming from? because it might be your shoulders, it might be your hips, it might be your toes, whatever. But when I started with my friends yesterday, for example, when I was talking to her, and I was just, asking a few questions about food. Okay, there's some things with food there's some stuff that she's not digesting. So she's not digesting, there's AMA in the system, some of the channels are blocked, and we have to take care of that. This is how we're going to get to the root of what's causing that problem. And that's where Ayurveda is great. And actually, it can work both ways. Last year, I was in India again for another retreat. It was not a yoga retreat. It was more like an Ayurvedic retreat. And it was all about, funnily enough, space and sound. And it was in an Ayurvedic hospital. And lots of people that I met over there were actually, some people were treating for diabetes. And Ayurveda is actually great for this kind of things because, it can work. So yes, you might still need to have like insulins. You might still need to have some medication to keep the blood sugar, at the right level and everything. But Ayurveda can really help actually taking care of that too. And I think that, there's maybe a moment where, you have to kind of like keep the two going on, but really Ayurveda can really maybe even taking over at some points. So that's where, I think that Ayurveda and allopathy are in tandem, can really work well together. That, I would say, like even disorders, Parkinson, that's another thing that, so my brother has Parkinson, so that's why I'm really interested by that. So I'm looking at how Ayurveda can help with that too. He's in France and in Brittany. And I actually met with someone she is an Ayurvedic practitioner. And I did a small gig with her when I was in France in September. And so she's taking care of my brother as well. And I see that, how it can, Parkinson is Parkinson. It's not gonna go away. It has been diagnosed, so it's there. It's there to stay. However, you can limit some of the symptoms and with Ayurveda as well, not just with medication. Actually, as it is, my brother has been diagnosed in 2022, and is not yet on medications because his symptoms are really kind of like small. And he's doing great, but he is every day taking care of himself because we told him, this is what you have to do. You have to move your body. You have to make sure that your brain is moving as well. Use oil in your body. Food is important. Warm, oiled, cooked food. It's going to be really nice to take care of these nerves, the nervous system, basically. So am I going to tell him, don't go and see your neurologist? Absolutely not. You still have to go and see your neurologist. You still have to follow. But if we can delay, because the medication that we use for Parkinson is the levodopa. And if we can delay when we're going to start the medications, the better it is. Because at some points, like everything in life, it works until it's not working anymore. And that medication is working until it will not work anymore. And you have to increase the dose. So that's the beauty of Ayurveda. If you take care by yourself, preventing what could happen later on, then it will delay actually. So that's the beauty of it. Like when we are talking about like the Doula stuff, for example, we all have a date of, at some point we'll have to go off that world to another world. And if you can do it like in a way that it's you are at ease and it's easier, then let's do it. And it's that's the thing with Ayurveda, like science of longevity. Sometimes we talk about it, and that's the longevity. Longevity doesn't mean that you're gonna live until you are like 120. Maybe you're gonna live until you are like 65. Who knows? But if you live until 65 and you live great and in good health, in good spirit, with good company, then I think it's amazing. Need to be like, quality versus quantity based.
Yeah, exactly. Quality over quantity. Really well said, JF. Really well said. So you've spent much of your life taking care of other people. I'm really curious how you prioritize taking care of yourself.
Right. So that's where we come to why I actually quit my job. And maybe that was not the wisest things to do financially. In Ayurveda, we really work with these like 5 elements, basic 5 elements, and air, space, fire, water, and earth. And one of the elements that I realized in my life that was actually a little bit out of control was the space element. We tend, and it's not, it's everybody. And I know for myself, for example, I wanted to, it's so funny, I think that I needed to fill the gap all the time. Earlier in my life, I would have said that I would have been super uncomfortable with silence and conversation with friends because I was like, okay, we need to fill the gap. I would need to, okay, we need to fill the space. We have to have a schedule. The schedule has to be, we do this, we do that, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do that. But then I realized it's not sustainable. And that's when I took my year off. That was the sort of like point where, okay, this is not sustainable anymore. I cannot just go all the time. So taking care of myself is really making sure that I have space. That's the primary thing that's come to mind for me. That's the priority for me. I need some space, and another things too is that it's so funny. My father was the type of person who was really slow. He was more like Kappa than anything, and I was so annoyed when I was young with my father. So like, stop, go! Like we need to go, we need to do this, and my father was kind of slow. And this year, beginning of 2024, I was with one of my friends who really knows me, my friend Catherine. And at some point, we were actually on vacations together. And I was telling her, I actually think that I'm like my father. I'm actually a slow person, but I can make things happen because Mars is my predominant graha, the planets in my chart, and I want to get the shit done. But I realized that I want to get the shit done, yes, but I also need, it's better if I do it slowly, methodically, and if I do it with space. I cannot be rushed. And I'm not saying that, I'm not rushing myself anymore. I'm still sometimes, but I realize it now. And sometimes, okay, well, no, this is not going to happen. I'm going to say no. This is part of my taking care of myself. I'm going to say no to lots of stuff. That before I would have been, oh, yeah, we can do this. Oh, yeah, we can do that. Oh, yeah, we do this. Oh, yeah, we do that. And now it's, no, this is going to be one activity today, not 36.
That's awesome, getting space. What's your criteria for saying yes to things?
The criteria for saying yes to things, first of all, it depends on the time because I know I have routines. Surprise, surprise. Ayurveda loves routines. So if it's like, okay, let's do that let's go and have dinner at 9 p.m. And I'm like, oh, no, this is not going to happen. It will happen, but it has to be a big thing because I don't do freaking dinner at 9 p.m. Because most of the time by 9:30, 10 p.m., I'm in bed. So this is saying no to some stuff. Or if it's kind of like, okay, you know what? Let's go downtown shopping and we're going to go to that place and that place and that place. And I'm like, absolutely not. First of all, I was used to love shopping. And now it's kind of like, it's just before Christmas now. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not going to go. You're not going to find me in a mall or something like that. No way, no how. But yeah, this is I choose the activities and I choose, what I want to do based on how I can take it. And how, not only how I can take it, because I can take it, like I'm a big guy, I can take some stuff, but how I'm going to digest it, what's the results going to be. Because I know that if I do all of that, then I might not going to sleep super well. Or the next day I'm going to be, okay, I feel that kind of like gap in me. And I'm going to fill it with shit. So I'm going to eat some stuff because I know myself. I know that, when I feel a little bit like, I'm kind of like, what's in the fridge? Let's eat that. So if I kind of like create that space and I can mentally think about stuff, if I feel because you still feel it sometimes, I guess it's a little bit of like, not depression, but it's a way of coping, a coping mechanism with life. So if something happens and I'm like, ooh, what is that? And I'm like, okay, let's go to the fridge and let's put some food in my mouth. So then, I can calm down. And now it's like, okay, wait a minute. I recognize what it is. I need to create some space. You cannot see it, but I have that pantry with a little bit candle inside in here. So I'm going to come and I'm going to be, okay, let's change maybe from the inventory, or let's maybe just light up a candle and be, okay, feet on the ground, hands on my thigh, and be, okay, let's ground it in. It's okay. It's just something that will pass, and you don't need to fill the gap by putting some food in your mouth, for example. So that's how I take care of myself.
That's awesome. So giving space and being really selective about what you say yes to and being conscious of how those activities affect you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Just awesome.
It's so important.
Well, and it must be challenging for you too, because you live in Toronto, you live in a big city. There's a lot going on there.
It is super energetic. It is all the time. I don't know if you heard a few minutes ago, but there was a car that passed by and that was like, wow. And I was like, oh. So it's always like that. The thing is, like, if you live in a big city, I would say there are some spaces and there are some sanctuary where you can go, and you have to find your tribe. That's the things too. For myself, for example, it's like the yoga people, that I found along the way. And there are these little sanctuary where I know I can go to resource and refresh. And I walk a lot. We have a dog, Joy. She's sitting somewhere over there. And we go for walks, and the lake is right there. It's like not even 10 minutes walk. So I go to the lake. And even if it's still in the city, it's far away enough that, sometimes the sound, because sound is space, right? And the sound actually muffled a little bit. And then the lake is like the sea, is like a huge space. So that's how I take care of myself. Going for walks where it's not in the street, for example, away from the hustle and bustle. And yeah. And another thing too, in the summer, we have a trailer. So during the weekends, we go in the trailer, and that's super important. But at some point, I would love to move out of the city for sure. I know that you are in nature, Veronica. I know that you live in a small town. I grew up in a small town, and I think that as much as at the time, my dream was to maybe live in a big city. Now my dream is to go back to the small town.
Same. That's exactly what happened to me. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in northern New Hampshire here in the U.S. Literally, the town I grew up in, much like the town in Brittany, in the winter, we only had about, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people. In the summer, it would triple just because we lived in the mountain and lake region. So people would just come out of nowhere to be there. And then as 20 something, late teens, early 20s, I was like, I need to go to the city and be a big city girl and all this stuff. And then, yeah, I hit my late 40s and I was like, get me out of here. I need to go live in the country again because the city life is not for me. And I'll tell you, we have a real aversion whenever we have to travel back into that direction where it's just like, oh, there's too many people. Many people.
I know, you know what? It's so funny because the first few years, I left basically my village in 20,000s basically. And I'm turning 50 in a few months from now. So half of my life I've been in that village and half of my life has been in here now. And when I go back, actually, I'm thinking for the last 25 years, I was like, I will never, ever be able to go back and live there. And now I'm thinking, there's a part of me that actually could totally go back there and live there. Not with my mother or with my brothers and stuff like that, because, we cannot be so different. Because obviously, I'm the weirdo, you know me. But yeah, I totally can live in that setting, and it's a very powerful place. Brittany is a very powerful place anyway, in terms of energetics, because of the land, because of the sea, and it's like, because of all the traditions. It's a very funny place with traditions between the religious traditions, but also very pagan traditions. And that's what I was like, oh, okay, there's something there that is, that's different. The land is, there's lots of energy. And that's what I'm looking for, actually. I'm looking for a place where I could feel the energy of the land. Not that I cannot feel the energy of the land in here. I can, especially when I go towards the lake. And again, I create that space and I have that space. But yeah, that's what I want. I want to live in a place where I'll be able to feel that, I'm in the place and I feel the place.
So that's a good vision for your future as far as where you want to go. I think that's really awesome. You have a lot of clarity around that, sounds like.
Yeah.
That's awesome because it's not easy to get that clarity. And that's not the only direction you're in now. So you just graduated from your Ayurvedic Health Counselor program. And so I know you have some pretty specific visions around that work. Can you share that with us?
Sure. So, yeah, because of my background, actually, I spent so much time with patients, but not only with patients, especially when I was working in ICU. One of the things that, I really love was actually not working with the patients, because in ICU, the patients are most of the time intubated and they are really sick, and you cannot really get a relationship with them. You have to take care of them, though. And it's so beautiful to take care of them for sure. But one thing that, I found myself where I was really good at, and I really liked it compared to some of my colleagues who hated it, it was like taking care of the family and taking care of basically the people who are going to become the natural caregiver. Because when the patients go back home, or when you have like older parents, or if you have somebody who has to go through chemo because they have a cancer, something like that, then the spouse, the immediate family, they become these caregivers, whether they want it or not. And what I found is that most of the time, these people, they're going to burn themselves out very quickly, because they will do everything or anything that they can to take care of their loved one. But sometimes A, they don't really know how to do that. And B, I know that to be able to take care of someone, you have to take care of yourself. And that's where Ayurveda is actually very magical for that, because Ayurveda has all the tools to make sure that you're going to boost your own solar system, your Agni, and to digest all the stuff that you have to digest, not only the food, but taking care of someone and basically being with someone who suffered. It's very hard to digest. And you have to be conscious, you have to be present, you have to feel, and Ayurveda can really help clean all the system. So then you can have your feet on the ground, strong enough to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm really interested, and I'm really want to help people who are natural caregiver. So I have a few things that I'm working on. A short program for caregivers with some meditation, obviously some Ayurveda tips in the kitchen, because I love to cook, thanks to you, Veronica. And yeah, I really want to help them. I'm designing a program where I'll be able to go and visit the settings, meaning that, if you are taking care of someone at home, if you need me, I'll go and spend a day or half a day with you. And there's lots of stuff that I can offer to help you, advise you, so then you'll be able to take care of your loved one. So yeah, that's
So helping the caretakers take care of themselves.
Yeah.
I love that.
When in yoga, we usually, always use that. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And when I heard that, sometimes I'm like, oh, cut the yes. Because you know how in yoga, there's always this kind of like beautiful thing that's come out of your mouth. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's kind of like totally outraged. But in that case, there's some truth in that that you cannot pour from an empty cup. But I would rather say that you simply cannot function when you are not at the max of your abilities. And Ayurveda can bring you up to that level, so then you can do the shit that needs to be done.
Yeah.
This is not about like the empty cup; it's about the shit that needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, totally. Because if you're so tapped out, you're getting upset about things that you can't change. Like my thing is always, if I'm getting mad at the cat for being a cat, I'm empty, right? Or if like you're mad at the dog for being a dog, or you're mad at whoever you're taking care of because they're like, that happens. No one talks about it, but like it happens. Caregivers that are burnt out, especially family people that have fallen into the caretaker role, that maybe didn't ask for it, didn't want to it, but are more than willing to do it out of love, out of compassion, whatever. But if they're doing that while trying to live their lives, they're burnt out, they get mad at their people for being sick. Like I've experienced it. I'm sure you have. Like when you're burnt out, when you're empty of ojas, because that's in the Ayurvedic world, we talk about ojas. It's when it's gone, you have nothing left to give. And that's when you're trying to pour from an empty cup, or we say scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like there's nothing left. And so I love that that's going to be your focus. It's something that is so needed. AF, like people need your work. Is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners about Ayurveda, your journey, or life in general before we wrap up?
See, this is the kind of thing that Ayurveda did to me. It's like, just taking a big inhale and a slow exhale. And no, I don't have anything special, but just that moment in here, sometimes when you don't know what to say, just take a big inhale and a slow exhale. And that's enough.
Yeah, just can you inhale, exhale around whatever it is?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Taking space. We're back to that. I think that's your theme, always taking space. And what's interesting about that is my husband is a musician. We talk about this all the time about how we don't enjoy media, whether it's music or movies or anything, YouTube videos, if there isn't a little space to breathe. We don't enjoy cluttered rooms, although you'd never know that looking behind me. But we don't enjoy clutter. We like there to be space, and that space is so important. And as we know from Ayurveda, space for digestion is important for physical and mental and emotional, spiritual, everything needs space. Yeah. Cool. So the last question, JF, the one I ask all of my guests is, what have you learned from the food that you eat?
What I've learned from the food that I eat, I've learned that you have to enjoy the food that you eat. If you eat some stuff because you have been told that it's good for you, but you don't really enjoy that, that's not going to work. Food has such a powerful energy too. It's not just about the food, it's about how you take it too. Basically, think about if you take the food with a good company, for example, that's going to digest really well. Yeah, I think that the thing that I learned about the food, I would have to think about it even more. I know there's something about like food that come back to, food is memory as well. That's come to mind. Food is memory. So yesterday, I was feeling a little bit like, Ranjit is in India at the moment by myself, which is great because I have lots of space. I created space in here. But yesterday I was looking for something comforting. And usually my comfort food is bread. You know, I love to bake. But I'm like, okay, I'm not going to eat bread. And suddenly I'm like, oh my God, rice pudding. So I went on your website and I was like, okay, I know she has a recipe for rice pudding. And that rice pudding was great. And it brought back some memory, actually. It's so funny because the memory that it brought back actually is like the best rice pudding. And you're going to laugh about that. The best rice pudding I ever had is actually the rice pudding that they served at the hospital where I did my training. So when I was working evening shifts at the hospital, when I was doing my training, there were always some rice pudding left because everybody was having rice pudding because, you know, all the population, it was either easier to eat, and their rice pudding was super good. And actually, last year, I went back in France, and one of my brother's friend, he actually, at the time when I was a student at the hospital, he was actually a cook in the hospital. And I asked him, I said, like, how did you do the rice pudding? And he was like, and guess what the secret is? It's exactly the same secret as yours. It's kind of like you don't put so much rice. You just have a little bit of rice and a lot of milk, and you cook it.
Yep.
So that was like, yeah. So every time I take that, some rice pudding, and I'm very selective about rice pudding because if I go somewhere and I take that, I'm like no. So I'm like, no, this is not going to work. But if I take it and I'm like, I have that memory that's come back, I'm like, this is a freaking good rice pudding. My mother-in-law do like the Kheer version of because she's Indian. Rice pudding is so good.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. It should be too, because she's Indian, and I feel like that's where rice pudding originated. Like, I might be wrong. Food historians don't come at me.
So you can trigger memory from food, and that's good memory. That's beautiful.
That is just beautiful all around, JF. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. How can people get in touch with you? How can people follow your work?
So basically, I created a company that's called Hands on Heart Ayurveda because I found that when I tell people, like when you feel overwhelmed or anything, the quickest way to bring back to yourself is to put your hands on your heart, take a big inhale, and a slow exhale. And then you already feel a little bit more grounded. So that's why I named my company Hands on Heart Ayurveda. And that's where you can find me, handsonheartayurveda.com, and on Instagram.
Don't worry, I'll link to everything in the show notes.
And you can find me. Though I needed some space, so I haven't been on Instagram for the last 3 weeks and stuff like that. But I'm gonna go back, and that's the way it is. But I needed some space, I guess. But that's where you can find me. And do not hesitate to send me an email at jf@handsonheartayurveda.com. And if I can help you, I'll be more than happy to help you. This is my dharma. This is who I am. I need to help people. That's why I'm here for. And I'm so happy that I found that when I was in my 20s and I became a nurse, because that was nobody's a healer or nurse or doctors in my family. I don't even know why I went there, but I know why now. It's just because it was my dharma. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and boy, is the world lucky that you did.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean-Francois. It has been an honor and a pleasure as always. Really wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap on another beautiful episode of the How to Take Care of Yourself podcast. A huge thank you to Jean-Francois for sharing his wisdom stories and the powerful work he's doing with Hands on Heart Ayurveda. If you loved today's conversation, and I sure hope you did, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite platform or all of them. Why not? Go crazy. That way you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, share this episode with someone who might need to hear it, because together I'm hoping we can spread the message of self-care and empowerment. As always, you can find Jean-Francois and his work linked in the show notes, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Drop a review or reach out to me. Your feedback means the world. And in case no one's told you today, I love you, and I'm convinced of your capacity to continue crafting a life worth living. Take care of yourself till I see you again. And remember, you're worth it. Thanks for being here, friends. Bye.